Rohan, what aspects of environmental management do you predominantly work in?
I work in using remote sense imagery as a sort of information source and feeding that information through ecological models and into decision management tools as to make optimal environmental decisions. So an example is to use LiDAR and hyperspectral imagery to design optimal prescribed burning regimes in Western Australian forests. Yep.
Great. What is your interest and role in the use of market-based instruments?
I worked on an MBI Round 2 project with Ben White at the School of Agriculture and Resource Economics at the University of Western Australia over the last year, and what we were interested in was that much of the environmental monitoring that's done or the metrics that we use, there's uncertainty or error in their values, in our estimates of those values. And really what we wanted to understand was how, first of all, how that uncertainty fed through the sort of monitoring to affect how we selected amongst conservation tenders. So that was the first aspect, and then and the sort of two major findings that we had from that was that the uncertainty faced by the end user, the landholder, was high, and whether they chose to participate in an auction or not was dependent on how averse they were to risk. And for the regulator, they could get an expected probability of success or a risk of not meeting their conservation goals and include that in how they designed the auction or how often they repeated it. But essentially they end up acting as the house in a casino game. If they play it often enough, then they know what their long-term expected return is. So, yeah.
And where do you see MBI developments in the next 5 years?
That's a good one. I mean, my bias is that I don't think we'll get outcomes from MBIs unless we engage in more environmental monitoring. There's ability in the response of complex ecological systems to conservation management, such that conservation management isn't, its success isn't ensured. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, I think there's a real role in MBIs in targeting specific projects such as icon species or a specific area where the focus is narrow, and you can just go out there, you have the information, and you target before you implement the MBI who you're going to invite to participate in the auction. So as part of the MBIs, I'm focused on the auction side of things. Yeah, and I guess the thing is, if every NGO implements an MBI and you have 30 odd NGOs in the one area, then will we experience MBI burnout at some stage in local communities, or is this something that the landholders or the community is going to engage in and it's going to persist? Yeah.
Any other challenges that you see ahead for MBIs?
I think the challenges in terms of natural resource management are kind of generic because we are dealing with natural systems, and I don't think specifically that MBIs overcome that. They'll just have to work within that context which we've had to work within for the last 20 or 30 years.